everyone, it's Julie and I am on to do a VR today. This is to the tag Shopping for Tarot, and this tag was started by Ladyknight of Avalon, and I will of course link her video. And I've seen I know it's been going around, but I've only caught a couple VRs. Once again, I am behind on my YouTube watching. But it looks like so much fun. And if any of you know me, you know how much I enjoy rehoming decks and minimizing my collection and reining it in. And I also love shopping for decks and buying them. So you can't have one without the other. So I thought I would love to do a VR to this. Okay, there are 10 questions. Let's get started. What was the last deck you bought and why? I bought 2 decks at the same time, actually. And I bought these 2 last month in October. One was the Samhain Vintage Lenormand by Tarot by 7. And I bought these basically because I wanted a Lenormand deck that I could use around the Halloween holiday and just in general this kind of darker fall season. And I just really enjoyed the look of this deck. I've been searching for kind of like a Halloween themed Lenormand for a while. And so I caught wind of this. And so I had it in mind to get this deck. But then as I was looking on Etsy and about ready to purchase this, I saw another deck show up in my feed. And that deck is the Fauna Inspiration cards, I think, and I cannot remember the creator's name. Something like, it's French. Avec la vie, or I don't know. I will link this. I'll write this all in the description below. I feel bad, but I do plan on doing a walkthrough of this deck. And yes, it's an animal deck. Yes, I have said before I do not do animal decks. But the reason I bought this one is because I had been thinking previously that I really wanted to connect more with animal energy. And when I saw this deck on Etsy and I saw some of these images, they just really called to me. And so this was kind of an impulse buy, kind of not. Those were my last 2 purchases. And then number 2, what's your decision process when you buy a new deck? Well, as you can tell by number 1, it's kind of all over the place. I don't know that I have a set decision process. If there's a deck that I'm unsure about, it might go on and off my wish list a few times. What I will do is search on YouTube for some good walkthroughs and reviews so that I can see all the images in the deck. And then other times, just after seeing a few images, I know that I have to have that deck. And so, for instance, the Lightseers Tarot, that's an example. Chris Ann, while she was creating that deck, she did share a few images on her Instagram, and as soon as I saw those images, I knew that I was going to be backing that deck on Kickstarter. So, and I did immediately as soon as the campaign went up, and I didn't have to see any more than that. And usually for decks like that I'm super excited about, I try not to look at all of the images. And then other purchases are just really impulse buys. I get in a mood and jonesing for a deck, and all of a sudden it ends up in my shopping cart. So number 3. What are deal breakers in a deck that keep you from buying it? I tend to stay away from traditional Marseille. It just doesn't call to me. Let me think. Keywords. I usually am not a fan of in tarot. I was gonna say I try to stay away from animal decks, but you see how well I stick to my own rules. So these are answers I give you today. They will probably not be the same answers I would give you tomorrow or some other day. But anyway, also, if the cards are way too big for me to shuffle, there has been 1 or 2 decks that I had considered buying. I think the Moonchild Tarot? That was one that I really liked the images for that one. I'm particular about like photography imagery, but I actually like the images in that deck. And from what I'm hearing, what I see, everyone keeps saying how huge those cards are, and so I won't be able to shuffle that deck. So I stopped myself from purchasing it. Number 4. Yes, number 4. I'm tired, can you tell? Little white book or big guidebook? That depends. Typically, if a deck is very much in the vein of traditional RWS, a clone or very close to, and it comes with a little white book, I won't even bother with it. I have actually, say for the Spirit Keepers Tarot, that one, even though Benabel she has the book of maps for that, and now also the medium book. I didn't want to dive straight into all that. I wanted to kind of dip my toes, and so I used the little white book when beginning my studies with that deck, and I found that very useful. But I also like bigger guidebooks. I think Llewellyn makes nice guidebooks. The Raven's Prophecy Tarot, I think that, something like that, where the images show different motifs than what you would normally see, I think something like that definitely warrants a full-on guidebook. So it really depends. There are pros and cons to both. With the nice guidebooks, they're lovely to have, but they also take up real estate. So next question. Do you have new deck rituals? How do you break in a new deck? A lot of times I will do a deck interview spread. I will also take some time to just look at each card in order more closely to study the details and just really take my time with each image. If a deck has imagery that's not necessarily traditional, or there's a story to each image, I will then read the entire guidebook, but not always. So if a deck feels more intuitive to me, I might just do my readings, receive the messages that I receive, and then look at the guidebook just to see what it has to say about the cards that I pulled. And I think that's pretty much it. I do like to, if it's a new deck, I do like to work with that deck for at least a good month to get to know it better. Let's see, number 6. Have you ever been disappointed after getting a deck because it felt different than expected? Bonus question, have you ever been pleasantly surprised by a deck after getting it? So yes, I have been disappointed, The one that comes to mind is, well, it comes to mind, but the name doesn't come to mind. The Everyday Witch Oracle. Oh my God. The Everyday Witch Oracle. I actually talked a little bit about my experiences with it in another video. And it's not that it looked different than I expected or felt. It just wasn't, it was different. Yes, it was the system, the structured system that the deck was based on just wasn't one that I jived with, and that was all. Just wasn't, we weren't clicking, despite the fact that, you know, Deborah Blake is an awesome writer, Elizabeth Alba is an awesome artist. We just didn't mesh. So that was a little disappointing given that I'm obsessed with the Everyday Witch Tarot. And then a deck that pleasantly surprised me. Tarot of a Moon Garden was one that pleasantly surprised me. That was my very first pip deck. Matt and I were in a witchy store and I wanted to buy myself a birthday gift. And this was like last year, 2018. And I said, Matt, you can pick out the deck for me. And that's the deck he picked out. And I had seen images from that deck before, and what had stopped me from buying it was the fact that it was a pip deck. But I thought, why not? So I did end up buying it, but I still had some reservations given that it was a pip deck and I wasn't familiar with how to use and work with pips. And also, there's a lot of detail in each image. So I just wasn't sure how we would get along, even though thematically it's totally my jam. You know, the kind of storybook fairy tale-esque theme to it. But this year, I worked with it for the first time, and now that I'm more comfortable with working with pips, I had so much fun with that deck. It made me happy just to pick it up every day for the month that I was working with it. So that was a pleasant surprise. Number 7, do you interview new decks? Yes, I do. Not always, but most of the time. And I use Katie Flowers' deck interview spread. Number 8, do you ever buy decks for a specific purpose, only using it for that one purpose? Yes, so my answer to question number 1, the Samhain vintage Lenormand, I bought specifically for the purpose of using it during Halloween and just in general this kind of time of year. And also the Halloween tarot, I had that on my birthday wish list because I wanted to use that for Halloween. I don't foresee myself using that deck on any other occasion other than Halloween. And then the only other deck I can think of is the Centennial RWS. I bought that solely for the purpose of comparison study. I don't use that for readings. Do you differentiate between decks you buy for yourself and decks you would use for other people? So there are decks that I know that I would use only for myself. Going back to Spirit Keeper's Tarot, I bought that knowing that that was going to be my deck and my deck alone. I would not use that to read for anyone else. And then other decks that I just know not to use for other people because I just know usually I'm reading for friends or family, and I know their personalities, I know their aesthetic. So they're just decks that are more my workhorse decks, and then others that I just know not to use. I have looked at decks thinking, oh, this would be a great deck to use when I give readings to other people. But that doesn't mean it's not a deck that I wouldn't also use for myself. So I guess I have decks that I use only for myself and would not use to read for other people. But any deck that I use to read for other people, I also use for myself. Final question. What is one thing you wish deck creators would do more of, or stop doing? Well, I hope that deck creators out there will continue to create, despite maybe feeling discouraged, because I know that there's been a lot of criticism and a lot of, drama when it comes to decks and the choices deck creators have made, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And I can imagine some deck creators feeling like, "Oh, fuck this, I am not making a deck, because no matter what I do, no matter what I create, I will not be able to please everyone. Someone's going to have something to put my head on the guillotine for, and forget it. This is just not worth it." I hope that you will still continue to honor your creativity and your artistic voice and create. Because yes, you're not going to please everyone, and you might be criticized, but as long as if you're attuned to the conversations that are happening in the community regarding decks, and what we're now expecting to see in decks, what we want to see, then you're already a step ahead there. If you can just keep those issues in your mind, and continue to ask the right questions, continue to ask the right people, that the images that you create, that the guidebook, I think that that's the best you can do. So you have my support. And then one thing I wish deck creators would stop doing is putting nonsensical titles on their oracle cards. And what I mean by that is the titles that just give me nothing to go on. And then on top of that, the image also doesn't help at all. So I'm becoming way more particular about my oracle decks, because I certainly have had and do still have a couple that have titles that just don't mean shit. And I'm more picky now about passing on the decks that have titles like that. So for instance, a card that's titled Topaz Unicorn Sorrow. No, thank you. That was my VR. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you to Ladyknight of Avalon. Can't wait to catch up on all the other VRs. And I will see you in the next video. Hope that you are all well. Take care.